Raise your hand if you prefer nonfiction, math, and thinking through ideas locally. If this is you, you might be left-brained. We'll learn more about this later in my presentation. Raise your hand if you prefer fiction, have great imagination, have big feelings you like to express. If this is you, you might be right-brained. We'll talk more about this later too. Our brains are all different and they are all cool. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about how our brains work, how to take care of our brains, what it means to be right-brained or left-brained, how awesome neurodiversity is. First, our brains have lots of jobs. The cerebrum is the big outer part of the brain. It controls reading, thinking, learning, speech, emotions, vision, hearing, decision making. The cerebellum is the back of the brain. It controls balance, coordination, and hand-eye coordination. The brainstem is at the bottom of the brain. It controls breathing, eye movements, heartbeat, body temperature, and swelling. Our brains do a lot of work. Our brains do a lot of work for our bodies, so it's important that we keep them healthy. One way to keep our brains healthy is by eating the rainbow. You can do this by eating fruits that have lots of different colors. Blueberries, strawberries, and spinach are some examples of these foods. One way to keep our brains healthy is by eating the Two other ways to keep our brains healthy seem like opposites, but our brains need both. It needs exercise and to rest. We need to be sure we get lots of good movement and plenty of sleep so our brains can refresh themselves. Breathing can also help keep our brains healthy. And working well, pausing to take a few deep breaths throughout the day can help your brain reset and think well. Like I said at the start of the presentation, most people tend to be right or left-brained. People who are left-brained often like to focus on facts and non-fiction. They tend to be orderly and like to plan. They are often drawn to math and science. People who are right-brained often like to focus on creativity and fiction. They are sometimes absent-minded or forgetful, but come up with great ideas. The right brain, left brain differences are one way our brains are unique, but there are lots of types of neurodiversity. All of our brains are different. Some brains struggle with decision making. Some brains don't like loud noises or bright lights. Some brains just never seem to be able to rest. Some brains see letters and numbers in different ways. Some brains have extra worries. But all brains have awesome strengths like kindness and creativity or unique talents. Neurodiversity makes the world interesting. My mom has a type of neurodiversity called ADHD. This means that she has really cool ideas but sometimes has a hard time finishing them. She also talks a lot and has a very messy desk where she sometimes makes careless mistakes. She sometimes makes careless mistakes. She is also a quick writer that thinks of new ways to do things, and she's really funny. I probably also have ADHD based on the fact that I'm pretty much have all the same tendencies as my mom. And the fact that ADHD is often genetic, meaning if your mom or dad has it, you might have it too. One of my uncles has a type of neurodiversity called autism. I interviewed him to see what it's like to have that type of neurodiversity. He said as a kid he didn't know he had autism because he wasn't diagnosed until he was an adult. He knew he was different in some ways because it was hard to make friends and hard to keep things organized for school. He said it was even harder because he didn't have strategies for making things better since he didn't have a diagnosis. As an adult, he said, in some ways, he said, in some ways, it even harder to make friends, but since he understands his neurodiversity better now, he has ways of working on it. In some ways, his life is very normal, and his wife own their own marketing company and do a lot of traveling. As I give this presentation, they're actually in Iceland. He also says that there are lots of ways which is his autism is awesome. He's naturally curious and passionate about his interests. Because of that, he understands things like technology, travel, computer, and home repair really well. One piece of advice he gives to all kids is to be curious about who you are. Don't be afraid to ask questions about what makes you unique, and if you need help figuring some of it out, be sure to ask your parents. All of our brains are different, and all of them are amazing. Be sure to take great care of your brain and celebrate what makes it